had a more data kind of centered decision-making process while you're putting together your brand story and putting together your content, then you're instantly going to have a far better chance of distinguishing yourself in the marketplace, in the category, and also making sure that what you're creating is kind of sustainable and a long-term approach, rather than sort of like, oh, we've just got to get something done for this quarter, or, you know, we've got to plan for the summer campaign. And so data really is a central piece there that enables a lot of that evidence-based decision-making, and that enables you to have confidence that your brand story in particular is not only sort of best representing your brand, but it's kind of really sort of hitting that white space in your category, and it's also meeting particular audience needs.
Welcome to episode 239 of the industry's leading business podcast for fitness owners and managers. This month's interviews are brought to you by our podcast partner, MyZone, the wearable technology that enhances paid programming and drives customer engagement. To find out more, go to myzone.org. A warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining me for this week's show. My special guest for today is Andrés Lopez-Varela. Andrés is the head of strategy at Storyation, an award-winning content agency working with brands such as Blackmores, Destination New South Wales, MetLife, City of Sydney and BHP. Andrés led the content program for Tourism Australia as the global content editor from 2014 through to 2017, when he oversaw content produced for visitors to Australia from around the world. He's also held senior strategy roles at agencies like One Green Bean and Weber Shandwick to deliver digital and content marketing programs for brands including Coca-Cola, Swiss, Commonwealth Bank, Pfizer and PlayStation. During today's interview, I chat to Andrés about why you should consider shifting your marketing focus to audiences and away from customers. He steps us through a definition of a brand story and how it should fit into your marketing strategy. And he shares 3 tips for a fitness business to start building a strategy around brand and content. One last but super important thing that you need to know is that Andrés will be speaking at the Fitness Industry Technology Summit that's coming up in Sydney, Australia on July 25th and 26th. I will tell you a little bit more about that after today's interview. We're about to transition into this week's show, but first, thank you to our podcast partner, MyZone. MyZone is a wearable technology platform that leverages personal goal setting, gamification, and social platforms to motivate your members. Learn more at myzone.org. And now it's time for this week's show with Andrés Lopez-Varela. Andrés, you say that we need to shift our marketing focus to audiences and away from customers. Can you explain to us what you mean by that exactly and why it's so important?
Yes, I mean, you don't need to really be sort of a marketing expert or a marketing kind of practitioner to understand that we've reached what I call peak marketing. It's really very difficult to create compelling content that cuts through all the stuff out there, especially in the digital space. Customers are very cynical. They're much more kind of tech savvy than they used to be. The old school ways of reaching them in the digital space don't necessarily kind of give the results they used to. And so a lot of the time businesses are focusing on how do they improve the way they speak to their customers, thinking predominantly through the lens of how they talk about their brand, how they talk about their products and their services, rather than actually meeting the needs of those people. And the audience first approach is a really kind of interesting approach from the editorial part of the world, from media publishers and media companies in general, because they are constantly looking to build audiences and they monetize their audiences. So they're not looking to create customers. They're looking to tell the audience what they want to know, help them achieve their goals, meet their needs, explore their aspirations, for example. And then once they've done that, once they have serve their audience's needs, then they turn to monetization. And I think that a lot of brands, especially when it comes to that sort of, more kind of content marketing style approach, then that's actually really quite valuable when you start thinking about these people's audiences and what needs they have and how you can actually bring your brand's expertise to bear on those needs, rather than just talking to customers about your products, your services, your brand. So it's kind of about flipping the table and saying, well, what does the audience want? Putting them first, and then bringing your brand into a more kind of natural, organic discussion that way. And that's the reason why I think we have to shift our focus away from customers and towards audiences when it comes to our marketing.
Andrés, let me see if I translate this correctly into the fitness industry. So as an example of what you're talking about, would it be fair to say that a fitness business that is producing a whole lot of educational-based content, be it blogs, videos, podcasts, written articles, and they are providing that content to the broader audience, to their market, free of charge? So it's just an information type service, and then not necessarily engaging that audience in their services until the audience is at a stage where they trust them and they like them, they're ready to buy. Is that a fair example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it is. That's a good kind of summary. I'll make two notes on it. The first note is that it doesn't necessarily have to be free. It can be paid. So that content can be part of a subscription and part of a membership, part of your actual kind of product or service, if you like, because it's as important to market to your existing audiences as it is to new audiences. But yes, generally speaking, when you're trying to attract new people into your kind of marketing ecosystem, let's call it, that's a terrible word, but I can't think of a better one. If you're trying to attract it into that space, then yeah, free content generally works better. And then the second note I would make is that your point about trust and kind of, reputation is really, really critical, because there's a lot of people in digital and in marketing who aren't doing brand anymore, and they aren't focusing on building up the equity in the brand. They are very focused on conversion, on performance, on the last click, the last attribution, and that stuff is important for marketing. But I think the reality is that if you're only focused on those aspects of marketing, especially in a sector as competitive as the fitness industry and as diverse as the fitness industry, then you are going to struggle to translate those kind of gains into long-term sustainable growth for your brand, and probably as well, most importantly, loyalty and advocacy for your brand.
Andrés, you talk about this term brand story. It's one that maybe people have heard of before, but for anyone that doesn't understand that term, can you explain to us, or perhaps give us a definition of what you mean by a brand story?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a really important component of your overall marketing, and defining that brand story is very, very important. It's a very important step. And it's not to say that it needs to be different to your brand. I mean, I think there's an important distinction to make between your brand as such, your colors, your logos, your values, the kind of, behaviors that your brand or your business has, and then the actual story of your brand. The story of your brand is really sort of something which is more kind of on a personal level. And because generally in the fitness industry, we're selling to individuals, and we're talking about their very personal kind of fitness and health goals, then I think it's really important to establish a brand story that relates well to that, and that's also differentiated. So in terms of actually like defining that term, I think that there's many ways to kind of define it. The most helpful thing that I would suggest is kind of two or three questions to kind of understand and define what a brand story is for you. The first one is to ask yourself, how much does your audience know about your brand? And then the answer to that question can open up a whole bunch of other questions and a whole bunch of other kind of navel-gazing and exploration, but it really allows you to define what they know versus what is actually the truth, or actually, versus maybe what they don't know. Maybe there are misconceptions. And so how can you sort of begin to kind of, root out those misconceptions and turn them into truths. The second question I would suggest is, what does your audience need from you? And that's to say, what do they need in terms of help, advice, to your point earlier, educational content? What do they actually need from you uniquely that only your brand can give them? And finally, the third question I would suggest is, why are you a brand? And I think that this is a question which it does seem kind of almost very metaphysical, if you like, but it is important to understand why you're not just a product and why you're not just a business. Because one of the founders of modern kind of advertising and marketing, David Ogilvy, once said, within every brand there is a product, but not every product is a brand. And that's to say that just because you have something to sell, it doesn't mean you are a brand. And so asking the question, why are you a brand, really is designed to create an understanding of your brand, the story that you tell around your products, your services, your people, your locations, your experiences, everything that makes up your business. Why is that important to the audience? Why is it important to the people who come to you for stuff, to buy products and or services? Why does it matter to them? And so I think those three questions are a good way to kind of define that. And then, your brand story really is, can be manifest in a number of ways. It can be manifest in brief statements. It can be manifest in sort of editorial kind of style guides. It can be manifest in visuals. There's a number of ways that it actually can come to life. But I think those three questions are really core to that.
Andres, I'd love to hear from you in a second an example of perhaps a famous business or brand that we might recognise their brand story. But before we do go into that, I'm intrigued to know where data fits in this equation, because we've talked about kind of the traditional elements in branding and creating your brand story. But of course, data is such a hot topic at the moment, now more than I think ever before. So can you explain to us where that fits into this overarching picture?
So I think it varies depending on who you ask. I'll give you my opinion in terms of where data fits. For me, data is central. And I would say that data for me isn't just Google Analytics and, email open rates and, your Facebook social demographics. It's not just that quantitative data, but it's also qualitative data. It's information that you get from surveys. It's information that you get from anecdotal feedback. It's observational kind of data as well. Data for me, I would suggest, is really about inputs and evidence. And I think it's really about suggesting that the data allows you to make evidence-backed decisions. And so from my point of view as a strategist, data is the center. It's really at the center of that kind of picture. It really is the thing that kind of binds everything together, because it allows you to make really good, robust decisions and really sort of, sort of defensible, backable sort of choices. When you've got to choose between one or two or three different things, then you can actually really go to the data and say, well, what does the data tell us that most likely would work, and what do we know we should kind of stay away from? And so data is sort of central in that way. It's also very central when it comes to you making decisions, even sort of, what might seem as relatively sort of small decisions for your marketing, like, what time of day do you want to send your emails out, and how often should you SMS your customers, reminders, if you like, and, what time of year is best for you to be sort of, doing PR or media relations for your brand or for your launch, for example, for your business. And so data is central to that idea of your marketing, but it's also central to the idea of your brand story, because a brand story can become very quickly a purely creative endeavor that is really only informed by what people inside your business say. Maybe your agencies, your marketing agencies, you might have a freelancer or a consultant if you're a smaller business, effectively giving you their opinion, or you might have somebody internally sort of saying, well, this is what I think we should be. But actually, the data allows you to test that, because if you're going out into market, if you've gone to the trouble of understanding your brand, developing a story, developing the right kind of content around that suits your audience needs, well then, what if you get to market and actually one of your competitors has done exactly the same thing or something that's very, very similar? It's very difficult for you to backtrack and pull out of that. If you had a more data kind of centered decision-making process while you're putting together your brand story and putting together your content, then you're instantly going to have a far better chance of distinguishing yourself in the marketplace, in the category, and also making sure that what you're creating is kind of sustainable and a long-term approach, rather than sort of like, oh, we've just got to get something done for this quarter, or, you know, we've got to plan for the summer campaign. And so data really is a central piece there that enables a lot of that evidence-based decision making, and that enables you to have confidence that your brand story in particular is not only sort of best representing your brand, but it's kind of really sort of hitting that white space in your category, and it's also meeting particular audience needs.
Andres, let's bring all of that together into a case study. Is there an example that you could share with us that would really demonstrate someone that has utilised their brand story and that combination of data to engage their prospects?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've worked predominantly in the travel space for a number of years, but when I was thinking about this conversation we're going to have today, I had a look at a range of examples within the fitness category, within the fitness and wellness category, and one that struck me, which actually I know of and I've seen in the past, is Under Armour, and they have a wonderful, I guess, very holistic view of their content and their brand as it relates to their audience. I think Under Armour has some great examples of how they're using data from a lot of their wearables, for example, to not just, you know, improve the health of the individual who's got the wearable, but actually creating a community around that. And so collecting data from a bunch of their wearables, trying to, you know, assess collective risk factors, and trying to assess how people who look, act, behave, eat, exercise, work like you do, you know, how they can improve their health based on the data. And this is not just a customer sort of experience or a product, but it's actually a really integral part of their brand story, because it shows that they are, I guess, it kind of differentiates them from other players in that space. In regards to, you know, just sort of outerwear and just sort of active wear, it really sort of positions them as more of a partner, if you like, in improving your health in a really kind of quantitative, data-driven way. And that's something that not a lot of brands that have, you know, fitness wearables, that have fitness apparel or even fitness equipment really do very well. Under Armour is very clearly using the data that it gets from those wearables, obviously, you know, all anonymous, all private, all safe, but it's using that data to actually create a story with evidence that says to people who wear their clothes, who buy their products, that actually we are very interested in improving everybody's health in a data-driven way. That's what makes us unique. We're not just going to give you platitudes. We're not just going to give you motivational and inspirational statements. We're actually going to give you data so you can make better decisions, and you can create more of a structured kind of path to better health. And then the second way they kind of do that is by actually a lot of the communication they do one-to-one over email within their app in particular. They have a really structured way of pairing content in those channels with products that are relevant to it based on the stage that you're at. And so again, this goes back to that idea of thinking of the people you're talking to as an audience rather than customers. Thinking of them as an audience first. What are their needs? If someone is you know, learning to run, they're going to run their first marathon, or they're doing their first trail run, well then they're going to need different things at week 1 to what they need at week 12, to what they need, you know, the week before the big race, to, you know, in their recovery as well. And so they have charted a very specific course, again, data driven, based on what they see from their audience, what they see, the expert opinion they kind of get from a lot of the people they work with, to deliver content in those kind of one-to-one channels in a way that's very tailored. And again, it says we are a community that's driven by evidence and data to give you the best chance to improve your health, not just, you know, platitudes and motivational, inspirational statements, but actual evidence that helps you improve in a really quantitative sort of way. So Under Armour for me is a really fantastic example of a brand that has nailed its brand story in a very unique way. It's understood what its audience needs. It's understood what makes them unique, and what that connection, what that nexus could be between what they can actually talk about in a credible way, what their audience needs, and also what the opportunity is in the category, because a lot of the other players in that space are sort of dabbling in that, but nobody's really kind of committed to making that level of data-driven communications and content for their brand as Under Armour has.
That is such a fascinating case study, and I'm really glad that you shared that with us, Andres, because I recall, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but when the news came out to the industry that Under Armour had either acquired or partnered with MyFitnessPal, I think it was at the time. So, and I think that they kind of went through this stage of working with and partnering with a range of different apps. And I think at the time, obviously they had previously had, it was all about the product, as you said, like the shoes and all of the different bits and pieces. But all of a sudden they underwent this period where they started working on, I guess, collecting that customer data. And it's fascinating to see the evolution of that now, as you say, the brand story incorporates taking on board that data and the learnings about their customers and how they can actually create a brand story based off that combination of customer data and products and services effectively that they provide. Now, just to finish off with, Andres, because I love the journey that we've been on, and you've given us a really great understanding of the definition of a brand story and how data can be incorporated as well. And I'd love to turn all of this into some kind of strategic actions that people can take off the back of the information that you've shared with us today. So can you tell us, in your expertise, just a couple of tips to finish off with today for a fitness business to start building their own strategy around their brand and around the content that they have, and perhaps utilising the data that they collect?
Yeah, Chantal, it's a good way to wrap it up. I think the first thing I would say is I would go back to those three questions I mentioned about your brand story. Ask yourself, what does your audience know about your brand? What do they need? And also, why is your brand? Why your brand? That's number one. I think if you can begin to start answering those questions, you may not get the final answer, but those questions will begin to open up your mindset, especially if you're a business owner. They will begin to open up your mindset to think beyond your products, your services, what studios and locations you have, what your kind of, what your classes are, what opening hours, what services you provide. It will really begin to open up your mindset beyond products and services, and think about the reason why an audience would kind of collect or coalesce around your brand. So that would be my first tip. The second tip I would suggest is really around understanding what data is going to give you meaningful information, because you can't and you shouldn't measure everything. There's just way too much data out there, especially the larger your business is. The chances are you've got dozens of tools that can give you data about everything in your business. And when it comes to understanding your brand, sure, you may need more than just the tools from your marketing giving you data, but you don't need everything. And so my second tip for people listening would be to set a list or a scope, if you like, for the data that you need to measure that's interesting. It's going to give you the insight you need about your audience, not about your customers, but about your audience. And in some cases, that might be data that is not about your customers. It might be data about new website visitors. It might be data about interactions on your social media channels. It might be about sort of, inquiries via your website. It might be outside of that traditional customer data. And it might even be sort of anecdotal feedback from what your staff are hearing on the front line. So that is my second tip. And my final tip I would suggest is simply, read as much as you can about your category, not just about your immediate competitors, but more broadly to understand what trends can kind of shape your brand story and your marketing in that sense, and also kind of set a list of regular sort of reading items, if you like. It's very simple, but it's very effective to understand exactly where you're getting your information from, and to understand the changes your industry is undergoing, and how your marketing can sort of adjust and adapt to meet the opportunities in the white space, rather than simply just copying or kind of replicating competitors.
Well, we are huge fans of professional development here, and I love that last tip. And I know that you said, it's something that sounds so simple, but I think just creating a ritual around that ongoing learning and applying it to just having that information coming in on a regular basis is super important. So, Andres, there's just one more thing that I do want to talk to you about, and that is, of course, the Fitness Industry Technology Summit, because we've kind of dipped our toe in the water of your topic today. So, for everyone that is in Sydney, Australia, and is in the country in July of this year, we would love to invite you along to the Fitness Industry Technology Summit. Andreas is one of the speakers. So, do you want to just tell us a little bit about the topic that you'll be chatting on?
Yeah, so I mean, my talk is very much aligned with what we've discussed today. It's called Audience First, Customer Second, and it's really about sort of unwrapping some key sort of practical advice that businesses can use in the fitness space, that businesses can use to utilize story, data, and technology to monetize an audience. And so it's sort of saying what we want to do is in this discussion, we want to show you how, as a fitness brand, you can build an audience using marketing content and then deliver, the sort of engaged individuals into your sales process. And it's really, it's a process that any business can leverage. They don't have to be enormous business. And in fact, some big businesses think that stuff like this can only work for small businesses. But the focus of my talk is to show how you can kind of leverage your brand story, use your own data, use third-party data to understand your audience better, and choose the right technology to sort of up-level and kind of modernize your marketing. And hopefully people that come along will kind of get some very specific sort of juicy, practical tips that they can begin to use right away. And, even just sort of the right questions to ask, because a lot of the time, sometimes we just need to ask the right questions, and then the answers, begin to become more apparent.
Well, after hearing your interview today, I cannot wait to hear you speak at the Fitness Industry Technology Summit. So I'll put all of the details for the summit in today's show notes. And Andres, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Chantal. I'm looking forward to the summit as well.
Team Rockstar Fit is an award-winning mastermind team that helps fit pros lead happy and balanced lives. Get mentoring and support. Learn how to grow your business online with Beachbody. You can apply for a free consultation today at teamrockstarfit.com. As you have just heard, Andreas will be speaking at the Fitness Industry Technology Summit happening in Sydney, Australia on July 25th and 26th. Tickets are limited, so if you'd like to join us for the event, I've included a link in today's show notes. Or alternatively, you can go directly to fitnessindustrytechsummit.com.au and register there. Most importantly, make sure that you use the code ACTIVE to save $100 on your registration.
Get ready for this week's bonus segment, your extra injection of information, education, and inspiration to strengthen your fitness business.
As you know, the Fitness Business Podcast is supported by some very special podcast partners, and one of those partners is MyZone. I recently had the chance to catch up with the president of MyZone, Emmett Williams, to hear about some of the initiatives that they have happening in the business. Here's what he had to say. Emmett, welcome along. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Chantal.
Now, it's been a little while since we've had an update from MyZone HQ, so tell us what's been happening in the world of MyZone.
I'm looking at my to-do list as you ask that question. It's there's lots. No, hey, look, we're in the month of June right now, and we're excited because we've been building up to the MyZone Global Challenge, where we're giving away $30,000.
That is phenomenal. I have seen the MyZone Global MEP Challenge everywhere. It is all over my social media. So for anyone that isn't familiar with it, just tell us a little bit about the challenge.
We're targeting you, Chantal. That's why it's on popping up. A look-alike. No, only joking. Look, this is the reality. But a lot of the people listening to the podcast now, we are in the industry and we're intrinsically motivated to exercise. We enjoy the process. If we relocated next month, one of the first things we would do is join up at a gym because it's part of our lifestyle. However, most of our members are not intrinsically motivated. Therefore, to keep them going, we do need to tap into extrinsic motivation and gamification, like you have spoken about countless times on this podcast. Gamification is a great way of doing that. And one way to really enhance the game is to introduce lottery mechanics, and that's what we've done. So essentially, we're rewarding both the operator and the gym member who is using MyZone and giving them a chance to win this money. And this time, there are many different games that we play, but this month we're essentially saying if you earn 1,300 MEPs, then you get your ticket into the raffle. And the reason we used 1,300 MEPs, and for those who don't have MyZone, you might not be familiar with that metric, but it's an effort metric that aligns with the World Health Organization. Those guys recommend that we should be doing 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, or 75 minutes worth of vigorous activity. That's what the 1,300 MEP seeks to, and we're rewarding members for hitting that quota in the month of June.
I absolutely love this challenge, and it's great. It's been really great seeing and hearing how many people have jumped on board with it. So other than the Global MEP Challenge, there's another thing that keeps coming into my email and I keep hearing about, and that's MyZone University. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, look, we've initiated a roadshow in the US, the UK, and soon to launch in Australia, where we're going from city to city. And it's a one-day off-site at a local hotel where we go through all things MyZone and explain what the opportunities are with everything from the software and the interaction with the members through the app, to talking points that trainers can use to enhance their paid programming, to marketing initiatives, so on and so forth. So if you have MyZone and if you're looking for that extra support, check out MyZone U on our website and have a look for the circus to come through your town. And it's a great full day event. There's even a practical where we do a workout at lunchtime, and lots of great takeaways.
I love the sound of MyZone University. And as you know, Emmett, all of us here on the show absolutely love professional development and committed to improving ourselves and ongoing education. So it fits right in with us perfectly. So just very quickly, for anyone that does want to check out either MyZone University or the Global MEP Challenge, or for any operators out there that do not yet have MyZone in their club, where is the best place for them to get some more information?
Yeah, look, online, our website is myzone.org. Our social media handles are MyZone Moves, and that includes YouTube as well. And if you go to those locations, you should be able to learn a bit, and then you're just one click away from talking to someone.
Excellent. Thank you, Emmett. And also just a sneak peek for everyone, I should say, Emmett is our special guest on next week's show. So make sure you tune in for that as well. Emmett, thank you so much for joining us for this quick little MyZone update today.
Oh, thanks again. Thanks, Chantel.
Thank you all for joining me for this week's show. A quick reminder that all the resources, links for today's episode can be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. A big thank you to our foundation partner, Active Management. As a listener of the show, you have a special opportunity to work with JT. You can get one free session when you buy one coaching session. No matter where you are in the world, technology allows you to work with him. Go to activemgmt.com.au/FBP family and work with JT to get more people moving and moving more often. Once again, that is one free session when you buy one coaching session, and it's exclusive to you. Simply go to activemgmt.com.au/FBP family. Thank you all so much for joining me for today's episode. As always, I wish you a fantastic and successful week ahead. And remember, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.